Okay, so before I get started with this video, um, I just told my boss that I was drag racing with his wife down the highway, and I'm probably not gonna get that promotion. Yeah, let's get into the story. What is up, all you individuals out there? It's me, full-time anime man, and we are here with the last part of What If Deku Was an Ice Wolf for now. At least for now. Alright? So, yeah, no further announcements. Let's go ahead and get into the story. Hope you enjoy. Now, where we last left off, Izuku and Shoto finally had managed to separate from each other. And it's going to be the next day, and Izuku was set for his entrance exams to get into UA and show off his skills. We then reappear with Izuku wearing a UA gym uniform that was specially designed for him just in case he wanted to change into his Arctic wolf form. He was doing a couple of stretches and getting ready for his mock test. Aizawa speaks over the intercom as Shoto is watching with them from afar. Alright, Izuku, you have 5 minutes to rank up 20 points to pass. And remember, you have 1-pointer, 2-pointer to 3-pointer robots. Each robot you destroy, you will gain that point. But also, remember to stay away from the 0-pointer. Izuku then nodded his head, saying, "Got it." Alright, ready, get set, go. Izuku runs in, and a 1-pointer robot enters his sight. He then lunges at the robot and conjures ice in front of it, trapping it inside, leaving its head explode, leaving his head exposed. He then uses the momentum in his speed, and he jumps into the air, kicking the robot's head off. He then moves on, and soon he comes across a 2-pointer robot, and it charges at Izuku. Izuku stands there, not fazed by the robot coming at him, crossing his arms. As the robot gets closer and closer, Izuku then conjured fire and sent it towards the 0-pointer. The robot then pushed through Izuku's flames, and Izuku turned up the heat higher and higher and higher, until the robot then fell to the ground, turning into a pool of molten metal. He would then move on to the next. He runs, and he sees... He runs and he looks up. He sees that the adults were watching him. They were impressed with what they were seeing, except for Aizawa. Izuku continues to run until he gets a thought. He must have seen something like this from Shoto before. He must be one of those people that's hard to impress. Perhaps he's not the type to always rely on his quirk much. If he's not impressed by this power, maybe he's more interested in raw physical strength and skill of what a person has. I got just the idea. Soon, Izuku comes across a big 3-pointer that resembles a tank. He then charges at the robot, and the robot charges back at Izuku, and soon the two meet in the middle, clashing into each other with a shroud of dirt covering them. Up above, Shoto felt a small discomfort in his hands and looks down at them. Back down, the dust clears. It reveals that Izuku and the three-pointer tank were at head-to-head. Izuku was pushing the robot as the robot desperately tries to get the upper hand on Izuku. It spins its wheels at full throttle trying to push Izuku back, but had his ground held. In a camera lens on the robot, Izuku then battered his fist back, and then he punched the lens of the robot. The impact of the hit made the robot slide back a few feet. Thinking quickly before the robot regained its composure, Izuku then squatted down in front of the robot and then grabbed it from underneath. He then began to lift with his legs, and as the robot slowly started to move up over his head, and then he brought the strength up to his arms, and then with all of his strength, he then did a little leap in the air, and he pushed the robot over on its head upside down. Izuku then crawled underneath the robot for it was still active, and he pushed the hidden button where it was. Aizawa was really interested now on this boy's strength and skills. In the auditorium from underneath the bandages, in the auditorium from underneath Aizawa's bandages, a smile came across his face. Next to him, Midnight spoke. Oh, I must say, he's very strong. I do like a guy who's strong. Izuku moves on. He only had 3 minutes left, and the fight with the three-pointer took longer than he anticipated. He then ran and immediately came across more robots. Izuku thought to himself that he had to be quick, for he only had 6 points, and he needed 14 more to pass. Reaching out both of his hands, he then conjured ice daggers, and then, aiming them at the robots, he then charged in at them and slashing them into pieces. After a minute would go by, Izuku would gain 18 points. Okay, I got 18. I just need 2 more, with 1 minute left remaining. Suddenly, in the middle of thinking, he hears crying in the distance. He runs and follows the sound until he finds it. It was a little boy crying a few feet away. Izuku tries to call out to the child to get his attention, but it would appear he's too far that he can't hear him. Izuku walks closer when all of a sudden a three-pointer robot bursts out from one of the buildings and charges at the crying child. Without even thinking, Izuku then ran in to save the boy. He ran, he never ran. He noticed that well, he never ran so fast in his life that by the time that he reached the boy, he turned into his wolf form. Izuku quickly grabbed the boy by the back of his shirt and dragged him out of the path of the robot. Izuku then put the child down and said, "Hey, are you alright?" The child then nodded and said, "Yeah, I'm fine." "Okay, great." Izuku sees the robot turning back to them and he says quickly, "Get on my back. I'll get you out of here." "Oh, okay." The little boy then climbed on Izuku's back and he would wrap his arms around Izuku's neck as to make sure that he doesn't fall off. As Izuku ran towards the exit, he was ducking and dodging every robot that tried to get in his way, when all of a sudden the ground started shaking, and from around the corner of a building, the giant zero-pointer robot emerged, blocking the exit. Ah, crud, said Izuku. What are you going to do? Asked the little boy. It looks like I'm gonna have to make my own exit. Hold on tight, kid. The giant robot then swings downwards with his fist, trying to get Izuku and the boy when Izuku jumped into the air and dodges, landing on the robot's hand and scaling up it. Okay, here we go. We're gonna get a little high, okay? So just stay calm. Mm-hmm. As he continues to run up the robot's arm, the robot then uses its other arm to try and scrape Izuku off of him, but Izuku jumps over it, dodging the other arm. By the time that he reaches the robot's shoulder, he then did a huge jump with a little bit of ice giving him a boost from underneath him. He tries to aim for at least like the top of the wall, but he ended up going over it. Therefore, they had another concern was a landing. For he and the child were now falling. As he thinks quickly, he then opens his mouth and then aims a fireball and shoots it into the sky. I hope this works, said Izuku. He then conjured ice from the side of the wall and then tries to conjure it underneath him, like guiding it. Think of it as Frozone from The Incredibles, able to conjure ice from his hands from underneath him and forming a sliding path for him to travel through. Izuku tries this, but the gravity is pulling them down every passing second to what, 230, 32 meters per second. So yeah, they're falling pretty fast. So, as they get closer and closer to the ground, Izuku managed to get the ice underneath him, and therefore he creates a slide for them to slide down of. And when Izuku looks up to the falling fireball, he then conjures a huge block of ice in its falling path. It's about to get a little wet, said Izuku. As he then maneuvered his path of the slide to the ice cube, the fireball then came in contact with the ice, melting a bowl of water in the center of it. Once they hit the water, they then slowed down, and Izuku said, "Are you okay, child?" The boy then said with a lot of enthusiasm in his voice, "Yeah, that was awesome!" They both get out, and Izuku looks over and sees all the adults running towards him, including Shoto. As they get closer, Izuku then reverts back to his human form, and Shoto speaks. "Hey, Izuku, great job, you did it!" "What?" said Izuku. "No, I didn't. I'm low on points by 2. I failed." Aizawa speaks up, saying, "No, you passed. Your score was a 58. Izuku was surprised of what he was saying. "What? But how?" "It's because you rescued him." Aizawa, even with his arms in a cast, points to the little boy that was in there. "Wait a minute. Why was there a child in there in the first place?" The supposed child then revealed himself to be actually an older man, just smaller. "Hey there, kid. You've earned rescue points, and a little extra for making me your main concern. You see, this was all a part of the test on how you would react to people in danger while being attacked, and you made the right choice, making me your main concern and getting me out of danger, and I actually had a little fun while doing it. I need to go back up that water slide and try again. Anyway, you really do deserve to be called a student of UA, so welcome aboard." Principal Nezu then walks up to Izuku, and with hand to paw, they shake hands. Well, wait a minute, I already said that. Izuku then smiled, and then we fade to black. Back at the house, we reveal Izuku, Shoto, Natsuo, and Izuku, Shoto, Natsuo, Fuyumi, and Rei, their mother, celebrating for Izuku's getting into UA, and in the same class as Shoto. They all reminisce about how great it's going to be and how it's good for Izuku is back, until their moment was interrupted when Izuku heard someone at the front door. Shoto, did you hear that? Yeah, I did. Izuku and Shoto would tell everyone to stay down while they go and investigate. Why? What's wrong? Asked Rei. We hear someone at the door. Both of the boys then walk to the door, and they have their quirks drawn, fire and ice, ready for a fight. But as they get closer to the door, they see that there is indeed somebody there, for the light of the moon was lighting a shadow underneath the crack of the door. Shoto then sniffed the air a few times and he said, Wait, Toya? Said Shoto. Wait a minute. Toya, said Izuku. The two boys then dropped their quirks and said, Who's there? On the other side of the door, they heard a muffled voice say, Crap, they heard me. Hey guys, it's me. Shoto quickly opened the door, revealing Toya, wearing all black with a long trench coat. The boys then look up with a sense of caution, and they see that Toya's face was horribly disfigured. There were black burn marks all over a majority of his body, with only a few fingers and his face, well, a part of his face intact. They saw that his eyelids had staples around them, and his jaw was being held in place with staples as well. From the living room, Natsuo says, Guys, who's at the door? He turns the corner, and then Izuku opens the door all the way to reveal Toya. Now, it took Natsuo a few seconds to realize who it was, but then he understood who it was. And then he said his name, Toya, which got the attention of Rei and Fuyumi, who got up and made it towards the door. Mom, Fuyumi, Natsuo. I hope you're all doing okay. They would all say that they're doing just fine, and after a minute of silence, man, there's a lot of construction going on in the back. Toya would suggest that they all go in and sit down for a minute. There was something that he needed to ask Izuku. And of course, they would practically gesture him inside, and he would take a seat on the couch with his hands resting in his lap. And so, after a long time of waiting, everyone had the same question on their minds, but Izuku was the one to ask it. Toya, what happened to you? Where have you been? When Izuku asked that question, Toya's face then turned to a blank expression towards Izuku. He was silent for a few seconds, but then his hands started to shake. Toya? Suddenly, his hand started engulfing in his blue flames, and then Izuku then placed his hand over his brother's flames, touching his hands, and slowly the flame started lifting. It's okay. Just take a deep breath. Toya does this, and he lets it out slowly. I'm sorry. It's just there's something inside of my head that I can't seem to get quite the grasp on. But to answer your question about what happened and where I've been, it was a few hours after we thought that you had died, Izuku. I thought that maybe I should give Shoto a break from Dad, so I suggested that Dad teach me how to do Prominence Burn. A flashback ensues with Toya's back engulfed in his blue flames, and Endeavor mocking him for not going any higher than he could. If you're going to use Prominence Burn, then you need to turn yourself into a time bomb. You could level a city if you want to, but this, I could compare you to a firecracker, small and harmless. Dad then showed me how it's done, so I turned up my flames higher. Again and higher. Again and higher. Until I lost control of my flames. I was engulfed and I was burned by every inch of my body except for my fingers and the top half of my face. I remember waking up in a hospital, and I felt immense pain all over me. I was covered in bandages, and though it hurt at first, I got up and I went to a mirror. I slowly started to remove the bandages, and I came to a horrifying discovery that my jaw was falling off of my face. My hands were burned. Well, every part of me was burned. I looked hideous, and at one point I snapped, and I remember, I can't remember much, but I remember falling, running for a long time. And then I woke up. I don't know where I woke up at, but after a while, I managed to calm down. I stitched up my wounds, and I didn't want you guys to see me the way I was, so I stayed away from home. I would wander around from town to town around Japan, and everywhere I went, people would comment about how hideous I looked. And at one point, well, at many points, someone threatened to call the cops on me. Why would they do that? Why are these people so cruel? I always asked myself. But then one day I heard this voice in my head that told me to do things, bad things that I would never do. Every time that I would try to ignore it, its voice would grow louder and louder in my head. I almost lost my mind that day, but then one night, while I was asleep in an alleyway, a man kicked me awake, and he had a blade raised towards me. He told me to give him everything that I had, but I told him that I didn't have anything. He then raised the blade up towards my eye, and he said, "An eye for an eye, then." He was about to stab me in my eye area, but then something took control of me at that moment. You see, as he brought his blade down, I grabbed his wrist, and then he tried to use his other hand to attack me, but I just grabbed that wrist too. And then he paused in mid-sentence, for it was too painful to talk about. But then he felt the comforting touch of his mother touching his left shoulder. He looked over at her and she said, "It's okay, Toya. Just tell us what happened." Toya then took in a deep breath in, and he said, "I burned him alive." his screams still echo in my ears. And after all was done, there was nothing left, only just ashes and bones. I don't know what it was, but something inside my head made me feel relieved about it. Like I actually felt better that I did it. And so I would wander around Japan for a while, and I would incinerate anyone that dared to do harm upon the innocent, those who were cruel to the undeserving. And then one day, the voice inside my head gave me a new name. Dobby. I am Dobby now. This would go on for a few years, and just about a few days ago, a certain someone popped in my head. Dad. I remember how badly he treated us, especially you, Izuku, when he locked you in the back of the house like a dog. I had a plan to ruin his career, but then I read a newspaper article that said that he was imprisoned for child endangerment and abuse and all sorts of other things. And so I came here, Izuku, to ask you, why? Why did you forgive him so easily? Izuku would smile at Toya and said, Toya, we could either let the past rule over our lives until the day we die, or we could simply just throw it into the back of our minds and just move on with our lives and not let ourselves be consumed by what happened in the past. That's why I forgave Dad. I was tired of being angry all the time at him and how he treated me. Yes, deep down inside, that's still our father no matter what. Toya would have a moment of thinking, actually taking in consideration of Izuku's advice. He's right. He let the anger of their father's actions affect now. Yeah, another reason he didn't want to come back home was because he was afraid that his father wouldn't allow him to see his siblings again. So at that moment, Toya felt confused. And then he took in another deep breath and he said, if you guys wish to call the authorities on me and have me arrested, I promise you I won't fight back. Toya then curls up into a ball, bringing his knees up to his face and locking his arms across his legs so that they'd stay in place. As he sat there weeping for a few seconds, but then he felt the comforting touch of all of his family members comforting him. We're not going to tell anyone, said Ray. Fuyumi and Natsuo would also reminisce. They would also say things like, we look after each other. Nobody gets left behind. That kind of cheesy stuff. Anyway, Izuku would then look deeply into Toya's eyes and say, Toya, there may be a chance that you are not in control of your actions from what you did. There may have been this thing in your head called an emotional vampire. And it consumes and it feeds off of hatred and anger and despair. much as what you've been feeding it for the past few years. Me and Shoto may be able to help you. You can? Yes, we can. But first, have you ever met a man named All for One? No? Okay then. We're gonna help you. Alright, Toya. I'm sorry. Alright, Shoto. You ready to go? Yeah, I am. Both of the boys then sat on opposite sides of Toya. They made sure that he was comfortable before they got started. Alright, now Toya, if there's a chance that you feel the slightest discomfortness, just let us know and we'll stop. Even if it is painful, I'm willing to endure it if it means getting this thing out of my head. Alright. Both the boys then placed their hands on the side of Toya's head. Before they went inside Toya's head, their mother would tell them to be careful. They just nodded their heads and said that they will. You ready? Asked Izuku. Yeah, I'm ready. Alright, here we go. Izuku then reached out to touch Shoto's palm, and soon they emitted that white light, and the light then emitted from the boys and onto Toya, which caused his eyes to shine bright. We then slowly zoom in at Toya's eye socket, and then fade to black. We then reappear a few hours later. The boys were in their UA uniforms, walking to school. As they're walking, Izuku gives out a yawn and says, "Oh, man, I gotta say, that was a really tough parasite." "Yeah, you're telling me," said Shoto. "Anyway, do you really think that the kiss of Sira could heal Toya's scars?" "Well, it's going to take some time, but with plenty of it, he should look back to normal soon." We then do a quick glance of Toya laying down in a dark room where he is resting with about, I'm going to say, 5 Sira wolves licking on his wounds, doing their best to heal him. And then back to the boys. They then turn the corner and they see their school, UA High. As they walk towards the entrance, Izuku says, "You know, Shoto, I'm a little nervous." "Why?" "Well, what if people don't like me because of my encounterment with the League of Villains? Will they consider me a threat?" Shoto would say, "Even if they do, Izuku, you should not let their words consume you. And besides, a majority of my classmates already like you. And as your classmates, we look out for one another. And even if there is one person that has a single thing to say about you, they can say it to my face. And if they ever try to take actions, we'll deal with it together." Izuku smiles, and they actually make it to the front of UA. There were about a few minutes before the bell rings, and they see their classmates just standing in one big group outside of the school. Before they enter, Shoto says, "Are you ready for this?" Izuku then looked to the school and said, "I'm ready." They would then start walking, and then Hiroshima would actually be the first to notice them, saying, "Hey, it's the Bako." The Bako Bros. Not yet. "Hey, it's the Toto Bros." They would then all start waving at them, welcoming them to their school. As they get closer, the screen then does a freeze frame with both of the boys walking towards them while waving back at them. Alright, and that's going to do it for this part of What If Deku Was an Ice Wolf, Part 11. So, Anyway, I hope that everyone enjoyed this story. And I feel like there's something else I gotta say. Yeah, right. If you would like the wallpaper like this with the wolf walking, a link will be in the description and somewhat in the comment section down below, so you could have it for your own device. Anything else? Nope, that's it. Anyway, I hope you all enjoyed this video, and if you made it to the end of here this far, consider yourselves #blessed, and I hope everyone has a nice day. Goodbye.